without losing our safety margin. John is reassembling the lab's trial vacuum deposition system. Julius, Mary, and Rick are making up our new trial solutions." Davis nodded knowingly. Even though he didn't really have a clue what they were talking about, 15% sounded like a respectable improvement. He shook hands all around, and then asked if there was anything administration could do to help. They wanted more space and more lab techs to get the job done more expeditiously. Davis explained that they didn't have money in the budget to hire more help. He wasn't sure whether money was available or not, but wanted to work toward a positive, not a negative budget. Then he had an idea, and grinned internally. "I see that there are 5 of you working in this lab. Isn't Dr. Gettnor all alone in the next lab?" They nodded, though several of them glanced at one another, he thought with some apprehension. "Would it help your overcrowding here if some of your equipment and experiments were moved into his area? I'm sure he's not using all that space all the time." I'm not sure that would be a good idea," Julius said. Davis frowned at this rejection of what he'd thought of as a perfectly good idea. "Why not?" Dr. Gettnor doesn't do well if he's disturbed." Davis snorted. "Well, maybe he needs to learn to adapt." The group laughed nervously. Mary said, "I have a feeling that isn't going to happen. We'll be okay." Davis frowned again, but moved on to the next lab. Pleased about his morning with the troops, Davis headed back to his office. He only remembered his intent to check back on Gettnor after he'd passed Gettnor's lab. For a moment he thought about skipping it. After all, Gettnor set him on edge and might ruin the pleasant satisfaction he felt at present. But he didn't like to think of himself as someone who skirted unwelcome tasks, especially personnel issues where Davis prided himself on his skills. Resolutely, he turned back and re-entered Gettnor's lab. Gettnor didn't look like he'd moved since Davis had been in his lab earlier. Still slouched way back in his chair, same 3D graphics on his big screen, though they'd stopped changing. Davis narrowed his eyes. Gettnor's hand no longer moved on the touchpad. Quietly, Davis moved up alongside Gettnor so that he could see the man's eyes. They were closed. Indignantly, Davis reached out and peremptorily tapped Gettnor's shoulder. Gettnor didn't move, except to slowly raise his hand as if halting someone again. Davis tapped again, a little harder. Gettnor slowly waved the hand he'd lifted. Davis pushed on Gettnor's chair, turning it toward him. Gettnor exploded up out of the chair, ripping off his headset and boring into Davis with flashing eyes. Davis stepped back uncertainly, suddenly feeling like Gettnor was looking down on him, even though they were much the same height. Gettnor said, "I hope," he closed his eyes and almost sighed. "Oh, I so hope this is important this time." Davis drew himself up. "Dr. Gettnor, you were asleep again. Do you ever do any work here?" "I was not asleep," Gettnor grated out. "Just as before, I was attempting to visualize." His voice faded out as he, for a moment, felt like he might get the picture back. He looked distantly up toward the corner of the room, and then slowly closed his eyes as he began to feel the pieces drop back into place again. "Gettnor!" Gettnor's eyes squinched shut a moment, then he wearily opened them with a discouraged look. "Go ahead, what's so important?" "I'm going around, learning what each group of scientists are doing. I dropped by your lab earlier, and you were listening to music and staring at your display, so I went around and talked to all the other teams. I came back here and found you, hours later, asleep in front of the same screen." With an aghast expression, Gettnor said, "You destroyed a morning's work to chat? Really? You had no reason to interrupt me except that you wanted to talk?" For a moment, Davis felt defensive, then remembered their relative positions in the company. "You weren't doing anything." "I was thinking, man. You should try it sometime."